Hey there, it's Carolyn with another Kira Studios video, and today I'm wrapping up our 4-part series on practicing drawing from imagination. If you've been following along, understand that you want to use center lines, cross contour lines, cylinders, and boxes to help your drawings feel like they have more volume and form. Today what I will show you is my personal process of how I think through my drawings as I make it up, making sure that I get the vantage point I have in mind, as well as making sure that my drawings feel really structured and solid. So here's how I do it. So when I begin a drawing from imagination, I usually have an idea of what I want the thing to look like. So in this case, I had an idea for the pose that I want the horse to have. And very early on, after I have my gesture, I pause to consider the vantage point. What point of view am I seeing the pose from? From high above, from far below, or from eye level? And I can figure this out the easiest if I simplify the horse into a simple box. If I have too many details at this early stage, it makes it harder to remain clear about the perspective. Here's how a horse's side view fits inside of a square. And if I make that square the side of a box, I can simplify understanding the perspective of the horse. Now, here I wanted to have a slight top-down view where I see a little bit of the top of the horse. As I draw the box, I make sure that all the receding edges, those edges that move away from us, that they land on my eye level, aka the horizon line. If you don't know what that means, go to the previous video and check that out. I'll link it in the description. Now the next thing I will do is I will deconstruct the horse into its simple parts. So for the body, I'm using a cylinder, and for the back, it's like a half dome. Then for the front, you'll see later this kind of tombstone-like shape. And I'm thinking through how they all connect with each other, and then even putting simple boxes sometimes around more oddly shaped forms so I can understand. And what I'm really clear on is how they organize around a axis. So here's that side view one more time. Notice how the torso of the horse is slightly above the halfway point. So now I can make sure that all the anatomical parts like the chest, the leg insertion, that they are slightly above that halfway point of the box. I'm thinking through the volume of the hooves, and I don't know if you can tell, and you'll see that later on even more so, the hoof at this stage is very clunky. Like all my shapes are very simplified, let's call it that, and I will go over and over them more and more to make them more naturalistic looking, but I'm okay beginning clunky. So here I'm working on the torso. I put some cross contours on there, reinforcing the roundness of the body. Here working my way down the leg to get the shapes laid in. And again, at this point, I'll settle for good enough. I've been around horses all my life. I've ridden horses, I've trained horses, so I know them intimately. And so I'm feeling confident that I can make a lot of the stuff up from my imagination. Now, if horses are fairly foreign to you, don't pick a horse as your thing to draw from imagination. You pick something that you're really familiar with. So maybe you're a car person, or maybe you just do a lot of gardening and you know certain plants really well. Begin with the things that you know really, really well, where you intuitively can tell if something isn't quite right. So that's how I'm operating when I lay in these shapes. I know that that front foot isn't quite right yet, and I will come back over it until I feel more happy with it. And if I hit a roadblock, I pause the drawing and I grab one of my reference books on how to draw animals and I study up on that anatomy. What did I do wrong here? So I'm never afraid to admit that, okay, this is where my wall is, and now I need to go study. I need to look and learn something. So at this point, I don't know if you can tell, I use some center lines for the top so I can tell where the spine runs. I'm using perspective lines for the head to keep the ears and the nose and the mouth organized. Notice they're all going to one vanishing point. The head is kind of like a wedge shape, but yet the edges, they all recede onto a vanishing point. And now I'm working more on those more subtle anatomical details, like which muscle overlaps which, where are the bony segments protruding, and I keep working it until I feel more happy with those more subtle shapes. And what I'm working with, just so you know, I'm working with a Prismacolor Col-Erase pencil. They're really great because they give you a lot of control over how dark you get, and yet they're soft and buttery enough. So right here you see me starting to get into some of the facial details. And again, as I do this, I pay attention that everything stays aligned. The right eye is aligned with the left eye, the right nostril is aligned with the left nostril, that the lips, the line that I chose for them, that's parallel, or at least going to the same vanishing point as the lines from the eyes. And again, I make all this up because I've seen horses so much and I know exactly where the bones are sticking out. If I wouldn't know how to do that, as I said earlier just now, I would grab a book and find a horse in a similar position and then inform what I started from imagination by studying. So here you see me doing something that I do a lot. Like I will draw a little side drawing trying to figure out the form. So for the ear, it's basically a tube, a cylinder, and then you have the open part of the ear cut into that cylinder. And that cylinder of the ear attaches to like a section of a sphere. So you have cylinder segment with a ear canal cut out. It's not really the canal, it's just the ear opening attached to portion of the sphere, and that attaches to the skull. So I'm always thinking about what's the simple form. So let's summarize. You want to have a great idea for a pose. You want to be clear on what vantage point you see it from. Once you got that, you get your simple forms figured out. And then you add anatomical details and light and shadow to clarify. So here I'm clarifying this plane is facing away from the light and the front plane is facing to the light. So here I'm showing you one more time how I'm thinking about, so this is the chest neck portion. I'm thinking about if I took that neck off, how would that attach to the chest portion? So the neck is kind of like a bendy tube, and I'm trying to figure out how does that twist work out? And I'm going back to using center lines for that. So the center line switches from being closer to the left on the top to being closer to the right on the bottom. And then for the form, I'm thinking about the neck as like a slinky that's being twisted a little bit. You can also go back to that little cylinder with a nail in it to help you understand the axis everything is wrapping around. That's just a way to understand, if you had to do some cross contouring, which way to make your marks. But yeah, using that center line and being very clear on what overlaps what and where the center line ends up. And lastly, just to visualize one more time, this is the box that's enclosing the whole horse. I'm seeing a little bit of the top, a lot of the two sides. So let's cap this drawing with a brief perspective reminder. If you have a rectangle way below eye level, its angles are very acute, meaning they're angling up a lot, like a pitched funnel. The closer your rectangle gets to your horizon line or eye level, the more obtuse or flat, like this, they become. So I hope this series has helped you understand that in order to get better at drawing from imagination, you pick something that you love, you pick things that are around you that you can observe, you study them, take them apart, and then reassemble them. And like that, you get better and better and better. So go have fun with that, and I'll see you for the next video.